So what I wanted to start showing you, Uncle Steve, is this particular thing here. So if you see here, we'll just go back here. This kind of creates like a dispensation chart, and up pops the cross and then it stops. That's the simple things here. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so we're going to start with a new file, and we're in the edit page here. And what we want to do is go over to the effects part and look down here, and we're looking for fusion or adjustment. Either one will work, doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use a fusion composition and put it in here. Now I'm just going to put it at the start. There we go. And I'm just going to make it, I don't know how many seconds. It's going to be maybe 10 seconds. So I'm just pulling it to the left there. I can adjust this afterwards if I need to. Okay, now we go down to Fusion and we click on Fusion, and we've got our media out. Okay, so everything needs to be connected to this spot. So this is our output. If we don't have this, it won't go into our screen here. Okay, so going back to Fusion. And the first thing we're going to do, if you see over here on the far left, there's a background. And we're just going to drag it in, so literally pull it down. So you can just delete that if you like, just press delete, drag it in again. We're going to see this little dot here. You've got a blue and you've got a white. This square, just drag that across to the media out. I'll show you that again. So we drag that little square there over to there, and you'll see that it's black up here now. And if I go back to the edit page, it's not showing anything, but it's anything I do, I will be able to go back here and have a look as well. Going back to our Fusion page. So I'm just clicking between the two. Okay, so we're going to use this background as a kind of thing for our clip. And this one here is a square, okay? And if I drag that down, it doesn't do much. But if I drag that rectangle, that square, onto the background, so I'll just drag it onto the background, and now it confines it according to whatever that rectangle is. So the black's in here. And this is the background node, so I want it fairly wide. So if I go over here to my inspector, we can actually change the width here, change the height, or if we go up to here, we can just drag it and pull it. I find it more convenient to use the width over here because it keeps it nice and even. And you can see our center. If I drag it up and down, it'll go up and down. Okay, so there's our rectangle. And so now I want to create the dispensation chart, and I'm looking at red. So let's go to a background, and we're going to connect it up to this little square here. So we grab the outside, drag it in there, and it creates a merge. Now, do you notice how it's all black up here now? I'm just going to change this background color by going over to here, double clicking it, and looking for a color that is suitable. So the red is perfectly suitable. I could change it anywhere here I like, but that red is a really good red. Okay, so of course we don't want the whole screen to be red. So if you go over to these things here, so this one here is polygon, and if you click on that, it of course disappears for a second. And what we can now do is we've got this cross on the screen. Wherever we start with that cross, that's where the first point will be laid. So if I click it there, so that's a left click, and I go and I've let go of my hand, and I'm just going to go somewhere here, and I'll left click, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to left click. Doesn't really matter where I go, and I need to go all the way back. Okay, now at the moment it's not doing much, but if I select this middle one and drag it up, we've got some kind of triangle here. And see how it's got these little handles here? If I drag those up, it kind of gives it a curved kind of shape. Now, this is the trick. This is the secret. I'll drag it right up here. It looks bad. It's not good at the moment. But what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to press delete on that. And so what it's done is it's created this kind of dispensation chart. And I can just drag it smaller. And then if I get around the center and drag it up, it's starting to look more like a dispensation chart. And if I get here, I'll just make it go smaller, smaller. And if I grab these little handles here, I can just shape it the way I want. Okay. Now at the moment, that's not the kind of chart I want yet. What I want is it to be a hollow chart. And so if I go over to here where it says solid, I unclick the solid, and then I need to give it a border width. So up to here to the border width, and I can just add some border width, and you'll see how it has created a border width. Now that's way too thick. So you can actually see that's a 0.01. If I went 0.05, that's a much nicer width for a chart. Okay, so this polygon here, once we're happy with this polygon, we're happy with the size of that, the shape of that, we can just grab that polygon, there it is, press Ctrl C, press Ctrl V up there, and you'll see how it's separated, and I just drag it onto polygon. And it looks like it hasn't done anything, but it's actually copied and pasted it. So if I go over here to where it says center and see that X value, I can just drag that to the right. And you'll notice how I haven't quite got it right here at the base, but we can cover that up later. Okay, there's a cool way I'll show you how to do that again. I'm just going to press Ctrl V again, and it's the same polygon. And I just am going to drag it back onto there, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to drag it to the right on the X value. Okay, that's looking pretty good for 3. Okay, and now I'll put that little one. So just very quickly, I'll do that again. This time I'll grab the polygon mask from there, drag it down onto it, and this time I will just click it here. I'll do the same process, down, bum, bum, and now I'm going to drag it up just a little bit. So I'm just making this much smaller than the previous one. I've accidentally put 2 in there. I can just delete that and press delete and bring it up the same way. And again, solid, get rid of the solid. Border width is going to be 0.005, and that's the same border width as the other ones. This is pretty cool. So if I want to cover that little hole, see that little hole, what I might do is I might put a different color or even the same color, depending on what I want to do, line across that. So I'm going to grab another background and drag it over here. You'll notice how I keep putting it further and further right. The further right it is and the more connected it is, that's what's seen last. So I'm just going to change that color to a yellow. There's a good yellow. And I'm going to drag that from that square down onto this one. And of course, that's not what I want yet, but that's okay. This time I'm going to grab this rectangle tool here, drag it down, put it onto there. So I'm just dragging it onto the background. I'm going to change my height, so make it nice and thin, small, and I'm going to drag my width and that gives me a lot more. And I'm just going to center it and bring it down. And that's looking not too bad, although you can see here this red polygon is just a little bit too high. So I'll just drag that and pull it down lower, and then that kind of disappears. So we can all do any of these things. We can touch any of these things as we go. Just be aware of them. Okay, so there's that yellow. I'm not happy with the width of that. It's a little bit too thick, the height. So I'll just make the height a bit smaller and raise it a little bit. Just a little bit thicker. You can see we can just adjust things as we go. There we go. Almost right. There we go. That's right. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so now I want to put a cross in there. Okay, so pretty simple. I'm going back to our background, drag our background, drag it in, make our background white. And now I'm going to put a rectangle onto it. So again, I drag it in and I just put it on top of it. And this one's going to be the centerpiece. So that's the center part of the cross. And of course, make it smaller. And that's pretty good. But what I'm looking at, now I'll show you a little trick. Up here, you can see it's got one thing in there. If I click on there, it's got two. So it goes from 1 to 2. It's a bit deceptive. When you can see the 1, it's saying I can go back to one screen. When you can see the 2, I can go back to the 1. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just this cross by itself. And the way we do that is we click on here, see how you got these 3 dots. And if I just click on the first one there, you can see over here that this is that. It is that. Okay, I've got it nice and centered. I haven't adjusted any of my center, so if you need to recall it back to the center, you can just change it to 0.2 or 0.5. 0.5 gives us a centered thing. Okay, so it's now centered. You'll notice how it's not lined up with that. I'm not worried about that yet. We'll worry about that in a minute. First, we'll create the cross. I'm going to grab another rectangle and I'm just going to drag it onto that rectangle. And this time I'm going to drag it down. This is going to be the cross part, the cross beam. And I can adjust my width. And if I adjust my width, it's kind of that kind of size. And of course, it's not in the right position. It needs to be higher. So if I go to my Y center value and just lift it up, what we've got is we've got a cross shape, and we can see that cross shape right there. Okay, so obviously this is not the right size. Obviously it's not in the right place. Well, there's a little trick we can use, just moving this up here. It's the transform tool. And this is the transform tool here. I'll show you that again. Drag that in. Now, if I drag it in between this, initially, let's try that again. In between, you'll see how it's going from blue to green. And if I let go, it will put the transform in between these. If not, I'm just deleted it again. If I've got it already in here, I can just go to here, drag this arrow onto the yellow, and it disappears up here. It's still there. And I drag that down onto the merge and it reappears. So this is my transform node, and I've got size here, and I've got where I want it to be. So what if I put the size smaller? If I drag that down, it goes smaller. If I drag it up, it goes larger. And I think that's kind of a nice size there. Doesn't really matter. And we'll go left. See the center up here? Just drag it to the left, and I can drag it up. That's where I want it. Perfect. Okay. Am I happy with that? Yes, I'm happy with that. Okay. So this is the start of it. And what I can now do is I can have the video play, and as it's going along, all of a sudden it'll get to a certain part and it'll pull the cross in. So it'll be out, then it'll be in. Okay, so the way to do that is to see this part over here. If I drag that red thing over there, this is the frames in the video. If I take it to somewhere around 120, which is a good spot, go up to my size, see the size here, click that red, and then you'll notice how we're on 120 frames. If I right click, I can, so I'm using the right arrow, I've gone 3 frames across, and I'm going to put another red, so in there, I'm going to go 3 more frames across, so again, 1, 2, 3, and put another red in there. Okay, so having done that, I'm going to go back, see how I can drag it backwards and forwards. I'm going to go back to the middle one. The middle one. Okay, so the middle one, the size is 55. The end one, the size is 55 or 0.55. And this one over here, we want to be 0. So I just go to my size and drag it down. So then when I drag it through, you're not seeing any of the cross, but I keep dragging it through and up pops the cross. Okay, now there's a cute little thing to do here. You've got 0 here, 55 here, 55 here. That 55 here on the far right is a good one, but if I go back to the middle one and just increase that size a little bit, like about there, if I go back here, see how it pumps it, okay? And so if I can have a look at this in real time. Mind you, this is all to do with your processing. So at the start, it'll be processing slowly. So if I click the play, see that? Let's try that again. There it is. Okay, so having seen that, if I go back to our edit page, you can see it's all showing. And if I click on there, press play, and you can see that up pops the cross there. There we go. All right, so going back to Fusion by just clicking on there, this is another cute little thing I want to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little ball effect that moves from this spot to this spot to this spot, bouncing along for the fun of it, just to show you how to do that. So this gives you the ability to animate all sorts of things. So I'm going to create a little blue ball. So the first way, drag in a background again. And I'm just going to drag it onto the back of that node again. And of course it all goes black. And see here, this is the circle tool, or the ellipse tool. Just drag the ellipse onto there and just drag it onto the background. And that's way too big. Wrong color. So change the background to a nice blue of some kind. There's a nice fluorescent blue. And your eclipse is way too big. Now, if I was to just pull this down, it's going to shape it into the wrong way. Okay, so it's not what I want. Just put it back to 0.5. So what I want is I want the width and the height to move at the same time. And to do that, I need to put an expression in. This is very simple, but it's a little bit more complex. It's that fun little stuff. If you click on, see it says width. You click on the width and right click it, you can go down to expression. And now it gives us this little positive box. And if I grab with my mouse on there and I just drag it onto the word height, you'll see it fits in the word height. I could have just typed in the word height, but this is a much easier way of doing it. And now if I adjust my height, you'll notice how the circle is exactly what I want it to do. Okay, so I'm going to make it a nice small one. Okay, and I'm just going to go to one screen. My dog's barking. And I'm just going to zoom up here. Okay, and And I'm just going to change that size there, okay? So you can see that that's there. I'm just moving it round. How I'm moving that round, I'm using the middle thing of my mouse, and I'm just holding the control or not holding the control, depending on what I'm wanting to do. So if I'm not holding the control, it moves it up and down. If I'm holding the control, it moves it in and out, okay? So at that moment, this ellipse is not in the place we want to be, so we're going to use that transform tool again. So we're just going to create some space for the transform tool and just drag that transform tool, there it is, drag it down in between, and it does it like that. Remember, the alternate for that, if we grab that transform and we just drag that arrow, so literally all I've done is grab that arrow, take it to the yellow and take it from that output into the merge again, and it's in there again, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it over here. So the way I do that is I just go over to my transform over here and I just move, see the center part? I'm going to move it to the left, and you'll notice how it's going all the way over here, and I can just move it down with my tool there, and that's going well. Just going to zoom in close on that so you can see that. So that's where that is. So you can see that blue over here. So what I want to do is I want to go back to where that cross comes up. So I'm just going to pull it. There's the cross. There's the cross. So we want that blue ball to arrive right there at this point. So all we do is go to transform, and you'll notice it's over at the blue, transform, and I go to my center and I just click that red again, okay? And I'm just going to go all the way back to say 10 and click that center again. See how it's there? And I go back, you'll notice how it's got that white thing pop up here. There's a white thing, so we know exactly where to go. Okay, so going back to this spot here, dragged it back to that white thing here. I want it over here now, so I'm just going to drag my center X all the way over there. Okay, so you'll notice how when I move my thing, the ball moves all the way over here. That's pretty cool in itself. But what I really want is I want the ability for the ball to move up here, and there's a fairly simple way we do that. First, I'm going to go to this point. So I'm just going to drag my mouse until I see the ball come to this point, okay? And I'm just going to move it ever so slightly. And you'll notice how now it's put a red there because I moved it. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm just going to drag it over here. There we go. So it's moved from there to Baxter, stop it. Okay, so now if I place my mouse in between this spot and this spot, let's just place the ball into the center. So the way I did that is I just moved that mouse, that spot, until it's basically in the center. And with that, I want to move it up here. So the way I do that is with my X, press that, and I move it up. See how I'm moving my Y? I move that up until it got to that right spot. And I'm going to do the same thing here when it reaches that center part. So if I go back here, that's about centered. It's about halfway, a little bit there, okay? And I'm just going to move that mouse up, that thing up again. And if I just move it back here, I can move it up again. And you'll notice now it kind of follows. It doesn't quite follow there, So just go to the center there and just move it back up to there. And I can do this as many times as I like to make it smooth. Or there's another trick. I could use those things again. See those things? So I'll do that. See how I drag that up there, and that will follow that smoothness. So if I go down here, see how it's getting out of sync there. So if I go there, I can just drag that there again the same way, and you'll notice how it's done that. So I'm going to use that same method, the second method that I used. In a second, I'm just going to do that. Let's go to the center here at this point. So first, I'm just going to center it here, so it's in between these two. Raise it up by using that mouse. It's not quite centered. There it is. It's kind of centered there, so I've moved that X and the Y to that spot. And now I can just click on that. I can drag this one over here, this one over here. It's not quite working. So clearly I need a second one in here. So I just drag something in here, and I can move that here. Drag something in here. See how I'm just dragging the handles, and I can just get it to the way I want. It's up to you how you shape that, but you'll see how it's kind of going like that. And so now when I do that, so that's where I haven't done all those things. I've just done one or two of them, and it's not quite worked here. See that? It's a bit low. So I just go to that spot and I drag it up. There we go. And you'll see it's looking pretty good. And I'm just going to move this over here. The way I moved it backwards and forwards is I'm just pressing my mouse. I'm pressing the middle button of my mouse down, and I can move it round. So let's have a look here. It's reached this point here, and we want it to go to this point. So I don't know, somewhere at 195, somewhere in there. And we want it to be all the way over here. And if I just move my mouse here, see how I'm moving it in here, just put a thing in there, and again the same kind of thing, center, lift that up, and I'm just going to move this over here and get it to the center there, move it up. And the same kind of thing, just dragging my things around. That's not too bad. But as soon as I do that, you'll notice how it's changing that. So I'll just, there we go. That's roughly right. Just moving it backwards and forwards. It's not quite right there. Just moving it there. That's not quite there. Just dragging it as I go until I'm happy with all of those things. There we go, and then of course the same thing here, just dragging it. There we go. And so if I press play, the blue goes up and round. It's going on some, you'll notice how some of it, sometimes it's smoother, sometimes it's not as smooth, depending on what I'm doing and how much I'm doing it. Press stop and go back here, and you'll notice how here it's going really smoothly. There we go. And that's how to do that.